Hey, I'm Melissa.
And I'm Whitney.
We started this true crime podcast over a glass of wine and quickly turned from true crime listeners into true crime advocates.
So get comfy, pop a cork, and grab a glass because we have work to do.
This is Cults, Crimes, and Cabernet.
Some content may be unsuitable for sensitive listeners. Discretion is advised.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. I don't have a lot to talk about except that we are on Apple subscriptions for those that didn't know.
Yes, it's cool. You just go to the podcast app, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then you'll see certain ones, it'll come out early or there'll be bonus episodes and it'll say subscription only. Click on it. And I believe it's $4.99 a month to get the episodes on Friday instead of Monday. So don't let that confuse you when we say happy Monday, because it really won't be Monday.
And on top of that, they're ad-free. So if you don't like pesky advertisements, that's how you support us so that we don't have to put the advertisements in there.
And resort to selling feet pics.
Yeah, we can't sell feet pics because Whitney doesn't like feet. So this is really our only option. Thanks, guys.
It's between podcasting and OnlyFans. This is what you guys got.
Moving on to my wine. I've got Old Faithful this week, or one of our Old Faithfuls. I didn't explore very deeply in the wine section this time. It was kind of one of those quick grab it and run situations. And I reached for Josh Cabernet Sauvignon.
It's such a good one, though. You know what you're getting.
It's affordable, less than $10.
Yes.
You know that it's going to go down smooth. It's perfect every day, kind of a good wine.
Yes, I agree. And when you said you were going back to our old, what'd you say, Old Faithful or
Old Faithful?
I don't know. I was thinking box wine because that's where we started.
It is where we started. I didn't go quite that far back in our catalog of wine. It's recent because it's in a glass bottle. So.
Woohoo! I have not had wine out of a box in so long. I really feel like I've matured.
I feel like if we tried it, we would be so disappointed in ourselves.
I'd probably be disgusted. I'd be like, I need something better than this.
Well, that's all we got.
All right, let's get into your case.
My case takes us to a city that I didn't even know existed until 2015. I learned of Woodlawn, Maryland, along with thousands of others, as they listened to one of the most well-known true crime podcasts, Serial.
I absolutely love. I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm already excited.
We learned about many places in Woodlawn with that podcast. The high school, Leakin Park, even Best Buy. With the town being just 8.5 miles from the heart of Baltimore, Woodlawn houses just under 40,000 people. And for some reason, I felt that was a little bit of a small population to be a suburban town of Baltimore.
I agree. I thought it would be bigger than that as well.
It is home to the Social Security Administration's headquarters and is only 9.6 square miles large. So maybe that's why not many people live there, because it's not that big.
Yeah, and everything is urbanized there, so there's probably not a lot of extra land, just free roaming over there. Not a lot of farmland.
Yeah, or subdivisions, because the land is already taken. Woodlawn carries a D+ grade on crimegrade.org for violent crime. This means that you are more likely to become a victim of violent crime than the average U.S. city. But Woodlawn is in the 27th percentile for safety. So even though it's got a D+, they still consider it safer than 27%, 26 other percentage of U.S. cities.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they do that math, but I believe them.
I don't math, so I just agree with the stat. The northern half of the city is a bit more dangerous than the south. Your chance of becoming a victim is 1 in 109 in the north, and as low as 1 in 709 in the southern half. While Woodlawn may not have the squeakiest of clean records when it comes to violent crime, it's not all bad. It gives a small town feel, but near the big city. A few notable people that have been born or resided in Woodlawn are astronaut Robert Kirby Jr., actress DeWanda Wise, of course, Adnan Syed, and the woman whose story I'm sharing. My story today takes us all the way back to 1976, September 12th to be exact. It was a seemingly beautiful day with a high of 86 and a low of 55 degrees. A passing motorist called into the Baltimore County Police Department, Precinct 2, when they found a body near the 5600 block of Dogwood Road near the Lorraine Cemetery and Mausoleum. When law enforcement arrived, they found a woman somewhere between 15 to 30 years of age, wrapped partially in a white sheet. She was wearing blood-stained beige Levi jeans, a white short-sleeved t-shirt, a white bra, knee-high multicolored striped socks, and a string of rawhide around her neck with a singular blue to turquoise-ish bead. Her hands were tied behind her back with rope, and over her face was a bag for grass seed with a label stamped with the company logo from Farm Bureau Association Grass Seed in Lexington, Massachusetts. Also over her face was one orange bandana with holes cut in it where her eyes were, and then a second blue bandana. All of these were tied tightly around her head with square knots. Nearby, a single light brown shoe with twine laces was believed to have also been the victim's. There was no identifying paperwork or items with the body. In her pocket, she had a safety pin with 2 keys. One appeared to be a house key that had been stamped with the numbers DB09212 and the town, Fitchburg, Massachusetts, USA, indicating it was originally cut there. The other key was assumed to be to a night latch, and I was a bit confused by this, as most night latches I have seen are keyless. Do you know what a night latch is?
I do not. I was just about to ask. I have no clue what that is.
Imagine the deadbolt alternative for a hotel. It's that little thing that pops out to hold the door at nighttime, essentially, from intruders. Usually
Okay.
placed above the handle as like an extra security measure, but most of them don't have keyholes, let alone a key that had teeth on it, that would need to meet specific tumblers.
Okay.
As the investigators and medical examiner began their exams, they learned the terrible truths of what happened to this young woman. The bloodstained pants confirmed that this woman had been severely beaten and raped, to the point that she was bleeding through her jeans. They also discovered that this victim, now known as the Woodlawn Jane Doe, died from strangulation. As they unwrapped the 2 bandanas and grass seed sack from her head, they also found another piece of the seed sack stuffed into Jane's mouth, perhaps to keep her quiet. As if this wasn't enough, the toxicology report came back showing an extremely high level of chlorpromazine in her system. Chlorpromazine is used to treat psychotic disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, severe behavioral problems, including ADHD, and even in major cases, anxiety before surgeries. It can be administered orally, intramuscularly, or even intravenously. In the early 1950s, it was intended to be used as a surgical anesthetic, but doctors in France learned that it worked better as an antipsychotic medicine for patients with symptoms of mania and psychosis.
So would it just relax them?
Essentially, an extreme form of Ritalin for someone that doesn't need it. It would just it's like Xanax. Think of it, but on the extreme level. It make them more compliant, I guess.
Okay, gotcha.
Due to such a high amount of chlorpromazine in her body, a normal dose for someone that took this on the regular day-to-day regimen, Due to that high amount of chlorpromazine in her body and that the white sheet she was originally wrapped in, law enforcement postulated that she, or maybe her murderer, had been a patient in a mental institution. The white sheet was similar to those that are used in most medical facilities. Obviously, a low thread count, not anything special. It was not some silk, beautiful, expensive sheet. The medical examiner also found that Jane had at some point in the past seen a dentist. She was missing 3 of her molars and had fillings in the other 5. They added her fingerprints and dental records into national databases with no matches. Several hundred tips came in to hotlines, especially after law enforcement offered a $2,000 reward. Many sketches, both age progressions and age regressions, were made, and describing Jane was a bit difficult. She had olive skin, but that wouldn't allow law enforcement to correctly identify her ethnicity. The only distinguishing mark on her body was a crude tattoo that was very light, and it could have easily been looked over. It was 2 letters believed to be any of the following combinations: J, P, S, maybe SS, maybe JB, maybe JP. That's how difficult it was to decipher. One witness came forward stating she was headed to church that same day that Jane was found, and she saw a Ford Econoline van in the same area roughly an hour before the passing motorist called law enforcement. But nothing panned out from that. They never found a van. They never discovered who that driver was or why they were in the area. Baltimore County was receiving a tip almost daily, with someone claiming the 5'6" to 5'9" dark-haired young girl was their loved one. And time after time, law enforcement had to let another family down that Jane was not their family member. As the tips began to come in slower and slower, law enforcement began to look into the grass seed bag. They learned that it was manufactured in Buffalo, New York, and was a discontinued bag that was only sold in Waltham, Rochdale, Lowell, South Weymouth, and Greenfield, Massachusetts. So how did it make the approximate 400 miles south to Maryland?
Yeah, that's a really good lead right there.
A couple of missing persons reports also caught the attention of officials, including Maria Mia Unhires, run away earlier in the year from Connecticut, but the identity did not match there as well. In 2006, while examining the evidence, semen was detected, but I could not find out if it was ever tested or if was even enough to be tested. Investigators continue pushing for answers. Jane's case even was featured on America's Most Wanted. It wouldn't be until 4 decades later. Yes, 40 years.
That's crazy.
That investigators were able to utilize new technology to gain some traction in Jane's case. After the 2015 case of Baby Doe, where a toddler was found in a trash bag in Boston Harbor, made mainstream media, when they found pollen inside the bag that led investigators to identifying her as 2-year-old Bella Bond, did Jane's case finally gain some traction. Baltimore County sent Jane's clothing off for forensic testing, where they were able to find microscopic grains of pollen. Experts found a blend of cedar and mountain hemlock pollen that is consistent with that found at the Arnold Arboretum in Boston.
They are just getting very good leads, I think, and even if they don't always pan out, they at least have something to go after. So this case is not becoming cold, but really it's been a very long time.
Exactly. 40 years is a long time to find these leads, but I applaud them for thinking outside the box. I applaud them for not giving up hope. And while this isn't a foolproof science per se, it is able to give investigators some direction as to where the victim may have been before being murdered. Experts state that there are no 2 locations with identical pollen mixtures, so you can quickly narrow down a geographical target. The forensic pollinologist that examined Jane's clothes stated that cedar and mountain hemlock pollen are found together in only two places: the New York Botanical Garden and the Arnold Arboretum, which is near the neighborhoods of Jamaica Plain and Roslindale in Boston. And they know that they're at those two locations because they are manufactured essentially because it's an arboretum and a garden. They have gardeners come in and bring these blends together so they're able to narrow it down.
Yeah, it's not like a pine tree or something that grows just
Wild.
naturally.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's awesome that it was that specific.
Especially the mountain hemlock. It actually came from Europe years and years and years ago. And so now it's only in specific locations that it's placed. With other evidence pointing to the Massachusetts area, the seed bag, and the keys found on the victim, this further propelled the authorities towards the Boston area. Once this new information was released to the public, a tip led police to think that she may have been an immigrant from Puerto Rico and that she had lived in Jamaica Plain. And perhaps that tattoo was JP for Jamaica Plain. Boston police learned that she had children that may have attended a Catholic school in the city, and flyers were distributed. Nothing came from this tip or the efforts of those volunteers distributing flyers. Thinking further outside the box, law enforcement contacted Bode Technologies, and they were able to step in and assist investigators in February of 2021, where they successfully extracted DNA from the evidence. They sent this extraction over to our friends at Othram with fingers and toes crossed for a comprehensive genealogical profile.
Oh my God, this is getting amazing.
Othram was able to use their forensic grade genome sequencing to create a profile and return it to Bode. And this is why I love programs like GEDmatch and DNA Solves. With this profile and the hard work of investigators, they were able to identify Woodlawn Jane Doe as 16-year-old Margaret Federoff on September 16th of 2021.
This is amazing. Freaking amazing.
Margaret was sassy and rebellious. She would often run away to friends or hide from her parents. She hung out with smoked marijuana, and her friends or the cops would almost always have to be the one to bring her home. In her hometown of Alexandria, Virginia, in 1975, she went missing for the last time. Her family chalked it up to her regular behavior, but still reported her missing. Being that she was from Alexandria and not Boston, the missing persons report was not discovered in any of the investigations because they had no need to look in Alexandria. Further work from law enforcement led them to Margaret's younger brother, who had a family member that had uploaded their DNA profile to Ancestry.com.
I'm just so excited where this is going, and I'm so happy that she was able to be identified.
When her brother was notified of his sister's murder, he said that he knew the news was coming. He had not heard from her in over 40 years, but he still held on to the hope that one day she would call him, maybe on his 50th birthday, maybe when she was ill, maybe when she was in the area. I think that's a hope that all families of missing persons have. He was questioned about if he knew why she had been in the Boston area or not, and he had no clue as to why or how she would have even made it to Boston. They had no family ties there. How would she have made it there?
Do you know how far she lived from Boston?
It's 448 miles. That's quite a trek.
Oh, wow. Yes. She would have had to. Yeah. I don't. Bus, maybe, or friends?
Maybe. A train. There's a lot of train lines through there. So perhaps she was able to have the funds for a train ticket. I don't know. Now that the Woodlawn Jane Doe has officially been named, what is next? Law enforcement re-released crime scene photos, a photo of Margaret, hoping that after 45 years, and now that they have an actual accurate picture of her, that they could receive a tip that leads to finding out who did all of these terrible things to her. Will they test that semen that they found? I do not know. So it remains unsolved. If you have any information about the rape and murder of 16-year-old Margaret Federoff, please contact Baltimore County Detectives at 410-307-2020.
Even though this is unsolved and not obviously a happy case, it still feel good at the end of this episode just because they identified her, which is a huge years old.
And they were able to return her to her family. And when I was researching it, the descriptions, and I'll share some photos of the bag, the seed bag, maybe, and Margaret's photo as well. And maybe someone will remember seeing her somewhere. But the work, even though it took over 45 years to do it, that these officers, they didn't give up hope, and they sought out new technology. They were diligent enough to hold on to the fact that maybe one day someone could process the evidence or could process these things to be able to get something from it. That always blows my mind on these older cases, is how did they know that something would be there in the future that could help them?
Exactly. That always boggles my mind as well. Were we able to figure out what the tattoo, the initials were?
Nope. It's still up in the air. I have seen a picture of it, and the medical examiner had to have had some eagle eyes. Even in the picture, and I even tried to manipulate it a little bit with Photoshop, add some shadows in just to see if I could determine anything. I can't even see a tattoo on the skin. So I'm shocked that they were able to find it.
That's crazy. Wow.
And maybe it's because the photo was taken in the 70s. We all know that, what was it, probably 35 millimeter film back then. It's not going to be it's not 4K resolution. Obviously, you kind of have degraded photos to start with. But I want to know, was it the Ford Econoline van? Was it more than one person? They did say the knots on the rope that had bound her hands seemed to be expertly tied.
But if they were all in the same fashion, that also leads me to believe it was one person. Because two people typically wouldn't tie, unless it's like the most basic little knot ever, like what I would do. But typically, if they were expert knots and they were all like that, it's most likely it was the same person.
And that is the story of Margaret.
Wow.
Just by listening to our content, you too are advocating for justice for these families. Thank you for making a difference in their lives as well.
We want to share a few ways you can support us to continue our mission. You can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $1 per month, or a simple rate and review on your favorite podcast platform helps us get in front of someone who may know something.
We will continue traveling state by state, seeking justice, because we will be there, no matter where,
no matter who.